Hey guys, welcome back to Laurence McKenna on LFC channel, where Liverpool have just beaten Burnley away 1-0. It was only 1-0, all right? And that's what everyone wants you to say. It was only 1-0. Ultimately, if you get the result, then we can discuss everything else around it. And I've got to admit, there was one point where I thought it was one of those days. Obviously, everyone thinks at some point it's going to be one of those days. But Burnley were well organised. Burnley knew what it was that they were set out to do against Liverpool. And not only that, they had time to work on it because they had a lot of guys who were there throughout the international break who were able to work on these kind of things. Liverpool, on the other hand, had a bunch of returning guys from places all over the world and started some of them. Alisson, obviously from Brazil. Obviously the Argentinian in the midfield there with Alexis McAllister. Talk more about his whatever that was in just a second. Of course, there are plenty of other people who went global too, but let's just talk about a little bit about the way that Liverpool decided to approach this game and the way they approach all games this season. There is a level of patience. There is a measured approach. They know that there are going to be changes from the manager. They know to an extent that the manager is going to make his little tweaks throughout the game. And they also know that being patient is much better than being rash, having to run in there, get a bunch of goals and try and get out, right? Liverpool have been nothing but patient and in control this season. And this was the embodiment of that. Yes, it was very difficult for them to create things, but still, we walk away with an almost 3 XG from this game. I know the penalty will contribute towards that, but our XG in the first half was still almost a goal. It was 0.94, something like that, right? On the other side of that, I think Liverpool also defended really well. Not that we needed to, but you can also credit Virgil van Dijk on the other side of that. He contested, I think it was 8 aerial duels for only the 3rd time in his Premier League career. I think the other one, there was another one which was West Ham, and I've got to look up the other one. Let me just find the other one. This has got to go and find this. Wait for it. Watford 2018. So 3 times he's done that. Meaning, obviously, that the long ball approach from Burnley today was one that was relatively unsuccessful and one that Virgil van Dijk, relatively a cheat code in this game at this point, allowed us to play. Not that I think Burnley were all that much of a threat. Satisfying in the end. We'll talk about the satisfaction. Just delay that satisfaction just a second. Do you know what I mean? Let's first of all talk about the way that Liverpool set up. It's very clear that when Arne finds his guys, then his guys get in the team, right? We know Dominic Szoboszlai was going to start at right back. He was the most fit right back option. Conor Bradley coming on later, obviously a different option, but Dominic Szoboszlai is starting at right back right now, and rightly so. I think he's very effective from that position, and it's actually very rare that you see Dom in those areas, especially when we've got control of the game. There's almost, I'm not saying it's a waste to start a right back, so when Frimpong came on as like that auxiliary type winger style player, it worked quite well. But I'm also saying that there are going to be games like this season where it's not about just Liverpool's shape, it's about the principles that Slot is instilling in these guys and being able to fit all of these different pieces of talent into this team. If Dom has to start at right back, which is, essentially a place that he covers every now and again, especially in games like Burnley, good. Get him in the team. That gives us a 4-man midfield. And essentially, when Burnley then sit deep and play their 5-4-1, Liverpool are able to still flood those central areas, still find lots of space, afford Gravenberch so much more space to operate in, push forward just a little bit, do the little flick and go over a guy's head, not once, but I think there were a couple of times where he flicked it round people in this game, drop that shoulder, go back the other way. You afford McAllister more space. I think the only downside is at the moment, I think we're still congesting the areas where Florian Wirtz operates, and I'm still not quite sure that he's always able to find that pass. The ratings on the apps and all these different sites that kind of do, let's see, was he an 8 out of 10 or a 9? I don't think they truly can quantify what it is that Wirtz does overall in a game. He had some lovely little jinking runs. There was that time where he got into the edge of the box and then just ran wide. Same goes for Ekitike, to be honest. There's so many times where I think of him as look at the space he's getting into. Look at the space he's affording someone like Kirkes. There's not really a stat that kind of quantifies that for Liverpool right now. And I think to an extent, Slot and Liverpool know what it is that they need to do to manipulate the opposition. Very similar to last season, keep them on the end of that jab, 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 and then judge it, time it, bang. And again, we didn't just get, we had 1 penalty in this game, and 1 penalty is obviously, I think it's is 1 XG. So take that off, we've still got almost 2 XG in this game. And there are going to be a lot of people out there going, well, what did they really create? Did they really? I thought Dubravka was actually pretty decent in this match. I thought Dubravka did pretty good. I'm also a bit of a skeptic of XG. I think it's a good judgment, but I don't think it's overall indicative of where a game was going. What I do think is indicative of where a game's going was the over 80% possession that Liverpool were enjoying. The fact that Burnley could barely get any control on the ball, and the only time that they could get any of that control was with counterattacks. And again, it's not stressing me out, but I kind of think that people overemphasize the counterattacks against Liverpool now because they know that is one of your only lifelines if you are going to play Liverpool. Get on the counterattack, get into those wide spaces and try and cut it back in. And again, it was a bit alien to Liverpool at the start of the season, but now I'm looking at them looking very comfortable in countering these counterattacks. Will it be the same against Atletico? No. Will it be the same against even Everton with Jack Grealish and lots of different talented wide players? No. It's going to be hard-fought, well-contested games. And that is where I think we're going to be looking at Liverpool again, changing their form, changing their shape, and working out where it is that Everton and Atletico and all these other sides are particularly weak. Something we weren't particularly able to do last season because, first of all, I think, we were looking at changing the team, or we were looking at kind of just getting results in that moment. And to an extent, after a while, I think we experimented less and less because of the high stakes that were there. Like by March, April time, Liverpool weren't experimenting because we just wanted to get over the line and win the league. And this season, we are going to be a lot more about rotation. We have to be, because look at the depth in that squad in so many of those areas. To an extent, it's not about keeping people happy, but you have to give people game time. You have to engage those guys. Talk about some of the easy bits. That kit, I think is beautiful. The green, it's not quite my green, but I like the green. It looks good. The players look very confident in it. Not quite sure for someone who's red-green colorblind that it fills me with joy every time that I see it on the pitch, but it's still a great kit. And I love that classic badge. There's times when you kind of think, oh, should we be doing something with Carlsberg? We are already doing something with Carlsberg. You get my point. It's a great kit. And with Salah wheeling away and with Salah looking so confident, what was it? Was it like that he did? I really enjoyed it. A lot of people this season, if Liverpool don't win every game 3 or 4-0, are going to find some faults. I saw on Twitter, Arsenal fans have started this whole when will Liverpool score late thing. Love it. Brilliant. Try it, guys. Works really well for me. A lot of them going like, oh, I think it'd be the 80-something minute. I think it'd be the early 90s. Love that. Good. Keep that energy for the end of the season as well. Personally, I think Liverpool are a team of attrition. These are all things, guys, we've been saying on this channel for quite some time because we've been looking at the way that Arne Slot sets this side up. Controlling, game of attrition. It's constant. It's relentless with Liverpool. And in the end, Burnley get exhausted. They make silly decisions when they get exhausted. And ultimately, Medjbury, Hannibal, made a silly decision to put his arm out towards it. My only question was it actually inside the box? Well, obviously it was. It's interesting just to watch Liverpool and the way that they operate. We were still confident and, how can I put it, I guess patient by that point. And a lot of people are already saying it's unsustainable for Liverpool to play this way. I've seen quite a few of those comments. I'm not quite sure what is unsustainable about almost 3 XG. I'll go through some more of the stats, by the way. I just kind of want to go through some more of these. Let me just go through some of these stats. 3 XG, 81% possession, 3 big chances, 27 total shots, 0 goalkeeper saves, 13 corner kicks. We've got to be making more of our set piece at this point, guys. There's a discussion around whether we've been training with Isak this week and then he's not been in the side. Maybe we've been training towards some of his better qualities, and we've been trying to integrate him and then we remove him from the team. But Ekitike is still a great player. 4 times actually, the amount of passes that Burnley had. Not that that's anything to brag about, but you get what I mean. Almost 2/3 of the tackles that they had. They had a lot of free kicks. I think there are times where you do see that Liverpool make a couple of sort of naive decisions, or they make decisions where we don't really need to follow through and get at that guy, and we do. We don't need to. And then ultimately, they had the red card, which for me, I actually don't think was a red card. I've got to admit, I don't think the second tackle was. Ugochukwu was unlucky as far as I'm concerned. I don't think the game turns much on that. If anything, I think 11 versus 11. Maybe they get more confident. Maybe they sit in even more maybe we find a different kind of space. And that's kind of what I want to talk about next, is how Liverpool finds space within this side. By the way, the first tackle on Ugochukwu, from Ugochukwu and McAllister is a straight red. So who knows? Maybe things are just sort of evening out. But you also, to an extent, I don't think with a red card, you can always sort of go, oh, well, that look what it did to him there. So can you... it's kind of a weird logic around red cards in the Premier League at the moment. And I'm not 100% sure that we're being consistent. Do I care more about consistency than in the moment? No, I care about a good impact in the moment. I also care about consistency, but I think both those things can be kind of balanced out, if that makes sense. And I think very often if you're trying to be good in the moment, you'll be consistent. Liverpool were good today. We were very in control. There was never really a moment where we looked out of control. Dubravka's a great goalkeeper, but they also have some really great players. And I think to an extent, Ekitike and Wirtz are part of that patience. Wirtz at the moment, I imagine, will be hurting a little bit because he's not quite had that like breakout performance that I think a lot of players want, like a performance where particularly you announce yourself. And I've got to admit, like, I think it's partly because obviously so many people rush towards him and he's got such gravity that it makes it kind of difficult for him to find that space. There are a lot of people who treat him with that like extra little push. They try and dispossess him almost to a further extent because they want to prove, oh, Florian Wirtz isn't going to work in this league. And Burnley were very physical with him today. There's a lot of times, again, I feel the same about Salah. A lot of times where I think if that's any other player, they're getting a free kick. But with Wirtz and Salah, we tend not to get those free kicks. And that's why I love watching McAllister, who I think is very game savvy. And that's one thing that if he wasn't in the side, I do think we miss, is like this savviness that McAllister has, especially early on in games, where it's like, this guy knows to throw himself around, to make his presence felt, to impose our midfield. Gravenberch isn't going to do that so much. Dom, every now and again he'll do that, but he won't do it with like a through tackle. He'll do it through being vocal. He'll do it through being technically kind of above everyone else and just floating through the middle of the game. Wirtz doesn't do that in the same way. He'll make his presence felt, but he's not physically imposing in the way that I think McAllister can be. Having that dog in midfield is really important to this Liverpool side right now. It's something that I remember back in like 2018, the first Real Madrid game that we lost in the final in the Champions League under Klopp. We lost it because we didn't have that edge, that bite back that we needed to beat those big teams. And it's something, because we've had such a well-constructed team for such a long amount of time now, that you kind of take for granted in these big sides that they are always going to have that balance. And we've added a lot of different factors in this team. You know, I think a lot of people thought, well, maybe there's a bit of an enforcer coming in with Kerkez. So far, Kerkez has been an enforcer, but there's also been the opposite side of that, where sometimes I felt his decision-making has been a little bit rash. And I've got to be honest, I thought in this game we might have started Robertson. And some people would see that as a disrespectful act. I don't particularly feel that way with, the way that, just the way that we operate. Like, Robertson's still a great player. But obviously, I think Kerkez wants to get minutes under his belt. I think we want to build his confidence. We want to build his confidence in terms of positioning. We want to build his confidence in terms of the way that he is kind of moving and interacting with everyone else in the team. And this is a great place to do it because there will be space. There will be those overlapping runs. But then he was taken off because of that yellow. He was so on the, like, I just wonder about his judgment and his decision-making in games. He's so on it sometimes. I think, guys, like, what... I'm trying not to be harsh on him because I don't want to be harsh on a new player. I think he's still finding his feet. From my perspective, Robertson always seemed like he was either savvy enough to do something well judged, where it was like, I'll get the better of you here, or he was just in control. And there have been a few times, obviously, we've seen that control slip. There was the second moment. There was quite a few memorable moments. But broadly, I think Andy Robertson has been very solid for a while. And it's only now that I'm watching Kerkez and sort of going, okay, you're getting your feet under the table. You're kind of learning where your positioning needs to be. There's a big ask of a left back and a right back in this team, but particularly Kerkez, of knowing when to give, when to go, when to stay. And all of that, especially when you're playing with McAllister on that side and Wirtz and then Gakpo, there's a lot of like, where is it that you fit into this puzzle and having to judge those things? I don't quite think he's had the same thing at Bournemouth. I'm not saying he's a blunt instrument. I'm not saying he's not capable of this. I think Liverpool will have done all their research and they'll be very comfortable at coaching players into this kind of thing. But also they took him off very early. And, I know it's because he's running the edge of a yellow and all those kind of things. I just think Slot sometimes teaches very obvious lessons, very publicly obvious lessons. Joel Quansah had that. I think there have been a couple of players who've kind of come off when they've not quite, it's not been very common, but we've always seen it like, you're not quite fitting in here. To an extent, it's happened with a couple of players out on midfield. I'm going to change things. And it works. I'd say it works a majority of the time because he's probably able to have that relationship with the players afterwards and explain where his decision-making was. I think Liverpool, at the moment, we're bedding a couple of guys in. But I think the weird thing is we're almost not bedding in the final guy that is Alexander Isak. And I've got to admit, like, today I was just thinking, God, imagine if we had the movement that Isak has and we were playing towards those kind of strengths. Some people are actually saying that we'll get the best out of Wirtz when we get the best out of Isak and when we play him, because he is one of those guys who's, I don't know, he's just so, there's some world quality stars in there. He's one of those guys though that will feed on the space behind Isak. Anyway, I think Burnley should have been down to 10 men for quite a lot longer in this game, but that is what it is. That's part of, a lot of people are going to talk this year about, beating teams by big margins. First of all, we impose ourselves in many different ways, and you impose yourself, especially when you have this level of quality, just through the presence of that quality and people feeling that they need to level the playing field or that they need to do something in order to kind of bring us down a peg or two. That's not always going to be the case, especially in the Champions League. We're going to be facing people who we see as like kind of equal quality or equal technical ability, and we did against PSG last season, even though last season, obviously, we were exhausted by that point. I'm going to be interested to see how Slot plays that. But I think when we bring in Isak, it's going to just change things completely because we'll have Ekitike off the bench, we'll have Ekitike on the left, we'll have Gakpo off the bench, we'll have Chiesa. And that brings me on to this like final idea of where Liverpool are going. Because look at Ngumoa when he comes on. Look at Chiesa when he comes on. These are two players that you could consider to be fringe Liverpool players. Rio Ngumoa, a lot of people talking about giving him more minutes. Sure, I can give him more minutes. I'm not going to give him a full 90. I'm not going to give him a starting berth just yet. Not because I'm like, this guy's not good enough. Because I want to give him the space to grow. I want to give him the space to enjoy his football, to not have the pressure so early on of having to deliver. And I know like that he comes on these high stress situations. What I mean is like having to deliver as a starter is very different to having to be an impact sub, and some of the excitement that comes with that, some of the management of just emotion that takes. And then the complete flip of that, where it's like Chiesa, who's a very experienced player and a player who was obviously very key for Juve, having to manage his minutes, not only because of his fitness, I think he looks fitter and fitter and tougher week in, week out. But I also think I've noticed, and a lot of other people seem to be noticing, he's on the field for a lot of very big moments for Liverpool. And like, even early on, when he first came on, I could see, Ekitike, if he was in the header position, maybe he wouldn't have been in that header position. But Chiesa gets this header, and then Ekitike, everyone's mentioning Ekitike. Chiesa is a very capable player who is not an understudy. He is a shift. He is a change in unit and a change in approach rather than a change in quality. He is of equal quality to Ekitike, all these guys, in terms of movement. And you see him being able to make that separation between him and everyone else in the side, or that back line, and finding that half space between the two. You see him enjoying a lot of the quality players around him and just either being able to play off them or being able to feed off, not scraps, but like the chaos and the gravity that those guys have. The chaos being, where's the ball going to go? Is it going to go to Salah? Is it going to go to this world quality player? And the gravity being, they pull players towards them, giving Chiesa a lot more space. He's operated in a Juve team like that for quite some time, and it works really well. Having said that, there are also a lot of people now questioning people like Mo Salah and talking about taking Mo Salah off and then taking Mo Salah off pens. I've got mixed feelings about taking Mo Salah off penalties. I think he's a great player for penalties. I think he's actually been a lot more consistent. There are a couple that kind of stick out to you, but Mo Salah is good on penalties broadly. I just wonder, maybe Alexis McAllister is, if there's a bit less pressure on him, fantastic. Or maybe Florian Wirtz, there's a bit less pressure on him, fantastic. I still think Mo Salah's obviously, you've got to give him these kind of his consistency bonus almost of scoring these goals. And I love it. I love watching him absolutely bury that penalty at the end of the game. I know a lot of people think of him as like, oh, well, will he score it? Sometimes I do feel a bit nervous about it, if I'm being completely honest. But I feel that Mo Salah, when he smashes it in like that, there is no one better for celebrating those last minute winners. And he totally gets what it is. He goes away to the away fans. He knows what he's doing. He's cementing his place as, one of the legacy players at Liverpool. And he's just absolutely like, he's not particularly had a great game, but at the same time, it's weird. I don't think he had a bad game today. I don't think it was like vintage Mo, but I also think there are a lot of times now where I look at it and I think your role is changing so dramatically. They're relying on you being so smart tactically, A, to know the space to find, but B, to know the other people to find, and then C, to know what's going on your outside, what's going on the inside. I think a lot of us take this Liverpool team for granted, frankly. And I think we've just thought, well, change out a couple of those pieces and we'll just get back on the road. It's not really the way it works. Like, we're betting in a lot of guys. Like TK Wirtz, still not finding that space. And we're not playing with our consistent right back. I know we're playing with a midfielder who's dropping in. It's hardly like, it's hardly that we're playing with like the scraps here. We are playing with very, very good players. But I also think he's not, isn't our starting right back. That's kind of that's the up and down of it. I was looking through a lot of previous Liverpool years. And I think it's when you look at these previous Liverpool years that you go, wow, what an actual side we have. What a silky team, and why are we taking these guys for granted? Virgil van Dijk is an all-timer for us. Gravenberch, it just came out of nowhere. McAllister, amazing in terms of like value that we've already had from him. Florian Wirtz, how many games is he in? He's in like 10 games into his Liverpool career so far. Cody Gakpo just re-signed a contract and has been so consistent for us. Was actually really good today. Really great with the support of Kirkes on the outside. And then Robertson didn't really struggle once he came on. I know we would never really done that anyway. And it's because I think he had an all-time display, well, not all-time, but like, a very consistent display behind him from Virgil van Dijk. I think on days like this, where Burnley are looking to keep it close, and then Liverpool could be susceptible to a counter-attack, Van Dijk being just an all-timer and using his aura of just being able to judge that space, restart counter-attacks, almost looking more like a midfielder, but then so confident when they're just putting the balls over. There's never a moment where you go, oh, a ball's gone over his head there. What are we going to do? It just doesn't happen. And I think we take it for granted. And I think, to an extent, the same with Konate, even though we end up taking Konate off later in the game, who we take Konate off for, we took him off in the end for Frimpong, and we changed our shape completely. I've just spoken about the individuals, and I want to finish on this. The management of this squad so far from Arne Slot, I know we're only, 3 games into the 3 games into the season now. Where are we standing in the table standings? Why don't I just, there you go. 4 games into the season, 12 points. We are ahead of Arsenal. 9 scored, 4 conceded, which is actually a worse record than Arsenal. But, we won all those games as opposed to whatever it is that Arsenal have not done. Tottenham equally 8-1. Bournemouth 6-5, Chelsea 9-3. Like, it's just worth considering. Just worth considering the management and the ability to push teams through and make these minor changes, and B, that he's not 1%, he's like 10, 15% of this team. Slot's management of this side, obviously, as we go on throughout the season, we'll see more and more and more of his rotations. The change in shape later on in the game, when Rio came on, when we saw Frimpong come on, the confidence that Virgil van Dijk gives that back line in being just able to manage so much more of that space than anyone else. There's a confidence and a swagger that Slot has instilled in this team, which I think in the past from Klopp, we almost thought it was a bit on-off. It was quite binary. It was very like one week we'd look that way and the next minute our head was completely out the game. This season, when our head isn't in the game, or we have a first half where we just don't score and it's like, well, there's a bit of pressure on the team to go back out there and score, to go back out there and do something. I was sort of thinking, oh God, like it's going to be one of those days. And then I remember thinking, Slot's got these great adjustments. He's got these things that look like, hey, throw him on in the moment. And he isn't just throwing him on. He's actually, he's been through these things in practice. He's been through these things in training with us to have Liverpool well drilled as to where they need to be at any one time. Hence why when Rio Ngamoa comes on, he knows the passing lanes. First of all, great vision from Ngamoa to pick out Frimpong on the far side, but I don't think he's just randomly looking for that pass when he cuts inside. Liverpool know where it is that players are going to be, and Slot is giving him options. Slot is doing things that are going to give a young guy who's coming on, a 16, 17-year-old, great confidence. And that allows us to do this rotation that we have now. It allows us to bring Chiesa in. We didn't have that as an option last year. We obviously had Darwin off the bench, and that was a very different option. To an extent, I prefer bringing Chiesa on over Darwin, because Chiesa now has a lot of these kind of cult hero type moments. You see him wheeling away with Salah, and Salah's like, ah. Same with the penalty, the same with the last minute goal, all these kind of things. This Liverpool team is much better balanced. And those people who are saying, oh, it's not sustainable, Liverpool are not looking to sustain this. They're looking to grow into their skin. They're finding their form. They're finding their feet this season. And we've not even added our biggest option off the bench or even in real life. Slot now says he has 45 minutes in him. Let's see which 45 those are. He probably won't play him for a full 45. He'll probably play him for more like a half an hour of that. I'd be very interested to see if Slot starts Isak, mainly because you wouldn't really sub someone off at half time if you were to start Isak. So I think I see him more as like a substitute or an impact substitute against Atletico Madrid. And I'll be interested to see what he does. I think an Anfield debut under the lights in the Champions League certainly is a big one. And Slot's management is going to get even bigger from here on out, basically. My main point being 3 days match, 3 days match, 3 days match, 3 days match. We need this squad to be as deep as possible. We need our right backs back. To an extent, we've taken off the option at the moment of needing to worry about who we rotate in and out of that midfield. It will be interesting to see where Dominic Szoboszlai fits in once Frimpong and Conor Bradley are fit. But that's a whole other conversation, probably for a whole other time. And for now, especially if Liverpool have got these opening 12 points and, we continue where we left off, players can't really complain. I mean, they can, but they can't. I'll be interested to know what you guys thought in the comments below. My man of the match, I think Virgil is silently brilliant. But again, I'm going to go for Dom. I thought Dom was great. Again, just kind of running things for Liverpool, giving us that confidence, giving us that, I think, energy in midfield. And McAllister I thought was great. It's kind of a tricky one. I think Dom, again, kind of man of the match. But yeah. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the free Discord. If you want to join the channel membership, you're more than welcome to. And of course, there's a Patreon down there if you want us to get a better share of that cash. There is also a super chat if you want to feel generous, and I will see you guys in all of those places. Remember, the Discord's absolutely free. Go and take a look at it. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Much love.